Hey, what's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome everybody to Sherdog.com. You are here in the trenches. It's your man Ant Walker live in Vegas for UFC 239. I think it is. I'm half asleep, so forgive me if I get something wrong in some of the basics. But I am joined once again by an exceptional man, a man who needs no introduction, but we're going to introduce him anyway. He's a pillar of the community. He's he's sensational as far as his charitable works. He also saves puppies and orphans from burning buildings on a regular basis. You know him as Captain Credential. His name is Jason Burgos. Jason, how are you doing, my man?
I mean, with that opening, you could also call me your friendly neighborhood journalist. That would be another good one. But I mean, the fascinating thing about this is this you're bringing. I wish this was live and that we could, get like Europe One and all those people about to get their comments. Anybody's watching because this is the Barry White Anthony Walker. This is the very tired, this is a fascinating presentation from Anthony Walker. I hope everybody enjoys it because it's very rare. It's special. It's a new level of sexy. It's tired sexy. And that's a special brand of sexy that only few people know in those middle of the night lovin's.
It's amazing actually that you bring this up because true sexiness is versatile. So I wake up with the sexy. So yes, the sexy is me. Yeah. This is what I do. I'm good at it. And I'm gonna keep getting better, despite the fact that I try not to be sexy, but I keep failing every day. It's another story, long story. And Jason, we do have questions to get to, and because my logistics are a little bit different, because I am not at home with my trusty comic book background, I am in the homie Oscar Willis's place right now.
So the Willis Den.
Yes, Casa de la Willis. So if
are we going to get a guest spot from a tired Oscar Willis at some point, just zombie walking through the picture at some point?
That is a distinct possibility. that a tattooed Englishman might just walk through the shot and grab some coffee or something. So anything's possible. Hijinks shall ensue. Jason, would you be so kind as to read the questions this week, and we'll switch up the format just a little bit. Man, I'm so tired.
You said this is like I didn't have to be there in person to now know what Sleepy Walker and Sick Walker sounds like, because I can imagine Sick Stuffy Walker probably also sounds like this.
I actually do feel like I'm not 100% right now. so I have a slight sore throat, and I know it's not. I know I'm not getting sick. I know that it's post nasal drip or that's what's going on right now. So that has to clear up. Because I did just wake up, and this is fresh off. I just woke up. So,
all right. So, our first question, as it always is, almost every week, is from Europe One. He asked, last week, every discussion on the Francis Ngannou versus JDS matchup mentioned Ngannou's superior technical striking, but what we saw was JDS throwing an overhand so overwrought and looping that it completely brought him out of position and offered Ngannou an effortless counter. Why did this happen? Anthony, your thoughts?
I think it's more so because JDS was, I don't want to say intimidated, but the power of Francis Ngannou is something that changes the way people fight. They don't fight the same, and it's a sense of desperation sometimes. Now, JDS did make it very clear that his intents were to knock him out. And in order to, and when you go out with the intention of knocking somebody out, not when it just happens organically, you tend to overcommit. He probably saw a slight opening and said, all right, let me take this chance. And because he thought, okay, this could be the fight ender. So he wings that bomb. And he throws so much of himself into it that he finds himself out of position and subject to a counter. That's kind of my take on it. What do you think, Jason?
I don't see anything out of the normal. I think this is classic Júlio dos Santos. What makes him so interesting and technically sound and difficult on an MMA level, because you really can't compare his striking to like boxing kind of striking, because MMA, in the end, MMA has a lot of this, these weird kind of strikes you don't see in boxing, and it works for tons of people, and it's planned striking a lot of times too. Like Archuleta did it against Dantes a couple of weeks ago at Bellator 222, a shot that just comes out of nowhere, and what he just did what he usually does. He likes to work the jab, and then he comes with those kind of things, or he comes with spinning back, kicks and stuff like that. That's just Júlio dos Santos. The unfortunate thing is he made the wrong decision, and years of success, years of confidence doing that. He thought he can do it on someone like that, and he should have known better. Like we talked about last week, Stipe threw in wrestling against Ngannou because he knew striking with him would be too dangerous. And Junior and his camp should have known those kind of punches would be too risky. This man just knocked somebody else out with a weird kind of semi, thrust, like a semi halfway hook on a guy that's shooting in on him and knocked him out. So this is a guy that can knock you off from any position. And if you're going to throw those things, you're going to maybe possibly get a position. And he doesn't need real true. This man knocked him out from behind. How is that possible? He threw a punch from behind him and hurt. There's even pictures of him behind him, and Junior's like, that's not a planned shot. That's not a traditional shot. So you have to be super smart. We even talked about in text. You have to be perfect. You have to be smart. You can't be risky with those kind of shots. And it's simply that. Ngannou is so freakish. He doesn't need much. He only needs like this. He can do like the 2-inch punch almost without plan. Like that's all he needs with his power.
Man, when you look at the Cain Velasquez knockout, like of course everyone treated it like the Zapruder film to see like his head rocking back into the left and all that stuff. But that was such a short uppercut. I mean, there was barely any space that was necessary to put somebody that a lot of people consider the greatest heavyweight of all time completely out and blow his knee at the same time.
His power is so strong he blows knees out.
Yeah, so we're talking about a different level of power. We're talking about something that you can't exactly game plan for, and that's and even look in hindsight, man, it makes what Stipe did that much more impressive.
Yep. Yeah, because we talked about it. This man, like he's a legend. I mean, to me, he was a legend before. He's done so much in heavyweight division, but this guy tamed the Predator for 5 rounds. There was really not many moments in that entire fight where it was like, oh man, Ngannou's got some momentum. It was just like, okay, Ngannou's loading up. He's going to throw a big bomb, and then the bomb will come and go, whoa, and then that was about it. And then it'd be further dominance by Stipe. I mean, Stipe, he's such a weird, underrated kind of great all-timer in that his strategy gets kind of overlooked, and that was a brilliant strategic plan by him and his camp. Something I'm surprised we didn't get a little bit more out of with Junior and his resume of experience and American Top Team. Like they kind of came out like a Junior Dos Santos fight. You really kind of can't do that against him. You really can't, unless you're a Daniel Cormier. And even I think if Daniel Cormier fights him, his style is to be aggressive, push. You can't be that. I would even expect Daniel Cormier to be very selective and then wait for that moment to shoot in and get on there. He probably adjusts his fighting style. You can't really, he's a fighter you have to plan for because he's so crazy.
Forgive me in case I'm stepping on the foot of a question we have coming up later on. But when I think about the possibility of DC versus Ngannou, of course, fighting the perfect fight. One thing that DC does that I would not consider perfect, but it seemed to have worked out well for him, and it's a very dangerous habit, and that's him allowing his opponent to hit him just so he can kind of feel what they have to offer. And he did that against Volkan Ozdemir. He did that against Stipe. He did that against Rumble even twice.
Yeah.
So don't do that with Francis Ngannou.
No. Nope.
Just trust the highlight reel. The man hits very hard. Take him down.
Yep. Now, I'm moving on to our second question from DLX. DLX asks, you expressed concern over the fact that the UFC is cutting the flyweight division because of the fact that it would leave less belts to promote. I'm not sure. Maybe you made this point. I don't remember.
Yeah, I've said that before.
But wouldn't that also open the door for 165? What do you think?
It would open the door for 165 if the door was actually open for 165.
Exactly.
And the thing is, the two could exist at the same time. You don't have to get rid of flyweights in order for 165 to exist. But in order for 165 to exist, Dana White actually has to let it happen. That's really the thing that's holding that up. Now, of course, I know the joke is like he said it's not going to happen, so it is going to happen. and maybe that holds true, but as of now, I don't think we should be framing the two divisions together, because there's enough room for like 12 new weight classes. Really, when you just look at the UFC schedule, when you look at the amount of fights that they have to put on, there's room for every weight class. It's just a matter of, are there enough bodies to fill them and make legitimate divisions? 165, for obvious reasons, would be a very stacked division that would just pull a bit away from 155 and 170, that are just overloaded with talent anyway. So, I mean, I don't like mixing 125 and 165 into the same conversation. Both can exist. Flyweight should stick around. 165 should be a thing. And yeah, let's do both.
There's not much more I can add to that. You answered it all. What I would do is follow up with a question. It seems like it's gonna want to have one must go. Do you have a preference? Would you rather flyweight or would you 165?
I mean, I guess I would rather 165. I mean, 125, because we have 155 and 170 already. So yeah, like the flyweights, I mean, a lot of them aren't going to be very good bantamweights because they're just not big enough. And that will kind of be a ceiling for many of them. So just keep 125. Like really, like why do we have to get rid of them? And it doesn't make sense to me. I know I've said this a gazillion times on this show. I just can't for the life of me get why that makes sense to anybody to get rid of the flyweight division.
Now, before I throw out my response and maybe use it as filler, for the next question, it's the poll question. Jay didn't have the results. Do you have to go look up the results in the forum?
I'll look it up real quick.
All right, so while you do that, I'll answer the DLX's question or my follow-up question, DLX. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'd feel the same way. I'd prefer flyweight. 165 has a lot of interesting options and interesting fights, but I purposely love MMA because it doesn't have all the in-between divisions and so close divisions and 3-4 pounds away divisions like boxing. So I love the fact. And flyweight, I would prefer because in the end, there's so many talented fighters in that range, the bantamweight, the flyweight range in Asia, in Latin America. And if the world leader right now does not do the division, damn, that's unfortunate for all those fighters. There's still, 165, all those kind of guys can still fight at welterweight and lightweight. So to have all those talented fighters, it's a benefit sure to Combate and One Championship that focus on those regions that have a lot of guys at that weight. But it's always good. If the top promotion is doing flyweight, it betters it for everybody. And I'm all for a lot of fighters having a lot of options, having a lot of chances to make good paydays and having competition. So, me personally, I too would also prefer flyweight. Do you have the poll results open?
Yeah. So I guess I'll read that one off.
Sure.
The poll question this week is, why did the UFC release John Lineker? The results just disappeared. Let me press that again. Got it. All right. So we have 53% saying he pulled out of too many fights. We have about 12% saying he couldn't make weight. Just under 24% saying he cost too much, and another 12% saying other. And yes, the math might be slightly off, but I rounded up.
I don't like any of those results. God, those results are very unfavorable. Like one saying, "Oh, he missed weight too much." He's been a bantamweight for a while, so I don't think he's missed weight at all. There, he missed weight at flyweight, right?
He missed weight at flyweight, but apparently this him pulling out of this last fight was a result of a weight cut. Something involving his weight cut. So, I mean, I do think the answer lies in a combination of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
He also challenged the UFC.
Yeah, that's the other I think that needs to be factored a lot.
Yeah, he challenged the UFC and pretty much told them, like, if you're not going to find fights for me, you need to release me. But they found fights for him and he didn't make the dates. So many times. That's true, yeah. I do think it's a little bit of everything, but it is kind of interesting that the UFC is willing to let go of a guy who is pretty popular, a guy who fights in this just ridiculous, exciting style, and somebody that I think we always will want to see. I spoke with Martin Lewandowski, the co-founder of KSW, yesterday, and I actually was the one who told him, like, John Lineker's a free agent. And his eyes perked up. He's like, "Hey, that's somebody I'm interested in." There are promoters out there that want a guy like John Lineker. And I know you spoke with Campbell McLaren, excuse me, of Combate, and he was like, "Hey, let's go."
Yeah.
Lineker is a guy that people want.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see this. I didn't think about this possibility until I was talking with Jose Young's MMA fighting yesterday, where he said that like this could be like one of those situations like Yair Rodriguez, where it's just a little bit of friction. They let him go as like an emotional reaction, and then
Yeah.
cooler
Yep.
heads prevail, and he's accepted back in the fold. I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Like when they find out, just like Yair, I think they underestimated the value of Yair, and then once he got pseudo released, they Kabate and you Bellator, everybody seemed very interested. So I think they may do the same thing. And what Jose said might be very true. But yeah, like props to Ryan Fortune, another good writer in the MMA journalism community. He made a great point that this guy, Dana White, a few weeks ago just talked about I want killers. There's no one that's more killer than John Lineker. Like, what kind of weird, odd doublespeak is this? Especially because there's been a lot of well-known fighters that have missed weight a bunch of times, or Johnny Hendricks being one to miss weight or injuries, and then they kept him around. It's unfortunate that they can be inconsistent where they show favoritism to certain guys and let them have all these missteps and issues, but they're quote unquote killers or people they like, and they kind of overlook it. And then there's some that that get in their doghouse, and he probably got in the doghouse with his comments about, give me fights or release me. And then they kind of will inconsistently overlook the fact that he's the guy supposedly that you want all your fighters to be like, and then you release them. So it's very confusing, but man, what a coup it is for any promotion that gets him. The guy is well known, well respected, exciting fighter. So Combate, PFL, well, PFL's probably, they don't have that division. Combate, one championship, Bellator, KSW need to be on the phone ASAP with his managers. And it's going to be great for him because he's a free agent at the right time. All these companies want him, so it's only going to help his value. He's going to get a very nice payday soon. Probably maybe even better than he was making in the UFC.
Tell me you're not going to watch Horiguchi versus Lineker.
Yes.
Rising New Year's Eve.
Yes.
Tell me you're not going to watch
Yep.
that.
Imagine.
One championship versus DJ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the best part about that, Jason, is that he won't even have to cut weight.
Yes.
The weight cut won't even be there. All he has to do is like do that little hydration test behind closed doors, and then
not behind closed doors though.
Behind closed doors. Behind closed doors.
I talked to people, didn't I? It's not that bad.
You talk to people, or did you see pictures and video of it?
Well, I mean, the fighters are taking pictures of their schlong, but so we're going with grand conspiracies. Fighters. The fighters are all lying now.
I don't think it's that grand of a conspiracy. I'm just saying public record. That's all I'm saying.
I got it on the record. Fighters telling me what happened. That is the record.
No, fighters telling you what happened, or is there actual documentation of what happened?
Oh my God.
But anyway, all right, let's not go down this train because we do have other things to talk about, and I'm sure we'll fight each other about this later on. It seems to be the one consistent thing we fight about.
Right. One, isn't that fitting? No pun intended.
I see what you did. I see what you did there.
You did it.
I did it. I did. Oh.
All right, moving on to Europe One once again with another question. As busy as ever on our question list, Europe One asks, did you see the absolute bloodbath that was Dalby versus Houston at Cage Warriors 106? They were practically ice skating on the canvas. What are your thoughts on the no contest, especially in lieu of Dalby seemingly being near a stoppage? I will have to plead innocence. I did not see that fight.
I didn't watch it in its entirety. I saw some of the highlights, and it was a horror movie. It was think about like a more bloody, more disgusting version of Roy McDonald and Robbie Lawler too. Like that's like, you remember that aerial shot after that fight when Conor and Chad Mendez were fighting, where it looked like there was just blood splattered all over the canvas. It was like that, only like 10 times worse, and blood pooling on the spots of the mat and everything. Like it was disgusting. So yes, the no contest makes sense. I do understand that Dalby was presumably going for the finish at that time, but also let's go back to a long forgotten King of the Cage fight that was nicknamed Wet and Wild because they held it outdoors and ended up being a rainstorm that happened that The mat was completely wet and slippery, and it was an unsafe surface. All those fights carried on, but you got to think, how were those fights affected by the surface, by you not being able to stand up, by you going for an armbar and your butt slides a little bit further, and now the position has changed. So while Dalby was was winning, it is very difficult to just say, hey, he should have been given the finish or should have been given the win, when the clearly unsafe conditions of how slippery everything was likely aided in what success he had. So I would rather see them put that fight together again and pray that no one bleeds to death in there. And pray that there's no slipping and sliding in blood, and that we actually get to see a full fight play out between the both of them.
That opens an interesting question. Then, I get to see the fight. Was the no contest just because the mat was too bloody, or was it because there was a bad cut? Well, what was the specific reason they gave for the no contest?
It was because the surface was unsafe. It was so much blood that it was too slick, and they couldn't stand up, and they were sliding around.
So if one guy had a chance to look like he might have been one, that shit is really interesting, because they have something similar in boxing where something happens, like a cut or something odd happens later in the fight. They will they will give you a result based on how the fight happened up until that point. A lot of times I think it's after the 8th round in a lot of boxing matches.
I want to say it's after the 4th round.
Really? So even earlier.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, of course, in the 4th round in boxing, it's not going to be as much as time-wise as 3 rounds of MMA, but that means the full fight has to happen in a 3-rounder and 4 or 5-rounder, which I think this was a 5-rounder. I think this was a championship fight. So I guess that's kind of null and void. But
well, I'll throw out this idea: if obviously you can't. Let's say it's in the 3rd round and you only had 2 rounds. What about if the fight was fairly close to complete, and instead of having no result in later in the fight, and unfortunate, and also MMA more than anything, more than boxing, guys are losing money if there's a no contest. If their contracts are based on win bonuses, guys just lost money, and it's unfortunate. So what if they did something similar to like international rules, as one championship would say, and just scored the fight up until that point? Let's say it's like, if you have a fight, 2:30 or 3 minutes pass in the 3rd round, if a decision occurs at that, you just score the fight as is, and at least you can get a definitive result instead of an unfortunate, disappointing no contest. What do you think of
that? I mean, it's not a bad idea, but I don't want to alter the rules in order to keep up the show and win money structure. Because that would serve as a function to justify show money and win money.
That's true.
As opposed to just saying, okay, we're going to pay you a flat fee to just go in there and fight, and you fight how you fight. That would be, I think, the best way to do things. Or even if the contracts had some sort of, and maybe they do. I've never actually taken a look at any contracts that haven't been publicized already. So perhaps maybe there is a clause in some contracts for no contest or for a draw that instead of getting the full win bonus, maybe you get half of that or something. Not sure how that works out, but I do think if we're doing anything to prop up that pretty archaic way of paying fighters, probably not the best idea.
Now, Purple Storm has our next question. He asks, John Jones seems unbeatable now. Who do you think can defeat him, and how? Also, if he gets a loss, do you think he'd continue with great success, or that his puzzle would be solved, a la like a Lyoto Machida, by others, so to speak? And also, there's a follow-up question to that from AS Deep. Which fighter do you think John Jones is John Jones's worst matchup in any weight class? I guess we'll go with the Purple Storm question, of which I think we kind of talked about a little bit, maybe like a month or so ago, but maybe things have changed. Who do you think at this point could be a real threat for John Jones?
I mean, I got to look at heavyweight for those real threats, or really one thing that we need to factor in is how old John Jones is. Was he 31? I think 31, 32.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, so he's in his early 30s. He should still be in his athletic prime, and I'm not anticipating any lesser version of him Saturday. But
he just turned 31. He'll turn 31 in about 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah. So we're talking about a guy who is entering his 30s. At this point, the clock starts ticking. You get about 35, and then athletically you probably won't be the same. So I think that's one thing to factor in, that maybe he just ages out of being so dominant. But at heavyweight, I mean, we just talked about Francis Ngannou. That guy has life-changing power. DC at heavyweight can pose a lot of problems. Stipe might be able to pose some
Yeah,
problems. I think even look at a guy like Alistair Overeem, he might pose some problems. I think at heavyweight there are more factors to worry about for Jones. One being him being able to take a heavyweight shot, which I don't think would be too much of a problem unless you're talking about the level of power of an Ngannou or like a Mark
exactly.
Hunt or something like that.
Yeah.
But then also we saw how in the OSP fight he was bulkier and he was more muscular and he was just a slight bit slower, and it took him longer to rev up. That could have been a function of his layoff, or maybe the extra muscle mass just affected his timing a little differently. So a heavyweight opens up other possibilities. As far as light heavyweight, I don't see anybody right now. I mean,
Yeah, I'll give you the top 10. I'll give you the top 10 real quick.
yeah.
Cormier, Santos. I don't know why Dan Cormier's even in the top 10 anymore. He's not going to fight there. Santos, Smith, Reyes, Gustafsson, Blakovic, Ozdemir, Anderson, Latifi.
Yeah, I'm not. The thing is, like, a guy like Reyes has to develop more.
Yep.
He has promise, but
Yeah.
him now, absolutely not. Um, we'll see what Luke Rockhold looks like Saturday. I think he would pose an interesting style matchup for him, and considering that Rockhold has imitated John Jones in camp to help train DC, he maybe has a little more familiarity with how he moves than other guys would. That's possible, but at the same time, John Jones is a computer, and he just downloads information, and it just comes out so incredibly fast and sharp, and he's processed everything you do, to where you make one mistake one time, that's it. Like, if John Jones, I mean, he can make one mistake one time, he gets caught up one time, and it never happens again. So I think the margin of error against him is so slim. It might be a long time before anybody is legitimately gonna dethrone him.
I think you nailed everything, and I think your first point was really his greatest threat, his age. He's his worst. He's gonna be like Anderson Silva or Roy Jones Jr. Like they're just finally gonna get old and they finally just lose. They're gonna lose, no doubt. They will lose sooner or later, but it's just gonna be that. And I think your next point is also excellent too. That's where it's at. Heavyweight. It reminds me of almost like BJ Penn. BJ Penn could have success at welterweight, but his optimal weight was lightweight, and that was his best division. And John Jones' optimal weight may be light heavyweight, but that's the scary thing about him, and that's why he's so, once in a lifetime, so significant of a talent. Because the same points we make for Daniel Cormier, oh, he's better at heavyweight, doesn't have to cut and all that stuff. That could be true for Jones at light heavyweight, especially as he's getting older. It's hard to cut weight. You're filling into your body. He may be the same thing. He may be next level better heavyweight too. And then we've already seen at heavyweight guys that are in that 220, 230 range have great success. Fedor and Ryan Bader's doing it in Bellator, and Cain Velasquez. So, I mean, I always was of the belief Cain Velasquez would have been his great matchup for him. But at this point, I can't really figure Cain Velasquez in anymore. I don't know what his body's really is up to it anymore, and I don't know if his mind's in anymore. My man's gonna go wrestle at AAA soon. I don't know how much he's into it. I think you also nail Francis Ngannou. That's the biggest threat. And I love this will be fascinating against John Jones. Francis Ngannou throwing leg kicks, which he did against Dos Santos. I've been waiting for someone for years to throw leg kicks at John Jones and those Bones legs. If someone like Francis Ngannou start throwing that sheer power, those leg kicks, man, how does that change Jones' attack, his explosiveness, his stance, his making him worry? So yeah, Ngannou, Stipe would still be very legit. Stipe's durable as all hell, tough as all hell, but I mean, he really is a special talent. I'm not a big fan of how he's handling himself out of the cage, but man, to sit here and like can't figure out who can beat him, that's pretty fucking amazing. But
yeah, like that becomes a very thorough conversation to try to solve this puzzle.
Yeah.
So like, and we're just two guys sitting down talking about this over microphones. Imagine being in there and looking at this guy and just figuring out how the hell am I gonna beat him?
And I remember a few years ago, before I really started doing a lot of the MMA writing, me and a friend of ours, we did like our own fake fantasy playoffs and like put all different fighters and kind of did like a pound for pound. And in our semis was Fedor, Prime Fedor versus John Jones. And this was like John Jones for like 4 or 5 years ago. And even then, we were unsure and kind of just went with Fedor just because we liked him more. But even then, Prime Fedor versus John Jones 5 years ago was a questionable matchup. And that just shows you how amazing he is. He's only getting more experience. And it's just crazy. But moving on to Kung Fu Z. Kung Fu Z asks, in Texas, we have a saying, beating the horse to death. Well, Kung Fu Z, we say it everywhere. We also say it in New York City. And I'm sure they said it in Washington, D.C. I'm sure they say it in California right now, too. But beating the horse to death, but pulsing Jones. Is the UFC allowing Jones and McGregor, with the problems that seem to follow, setting a bad example for future fighters and kids? You know, that being top stars allows you to do what you want with basically no consequences. I mean, we've kind of talked about this a lot too. This is not a new subject for us, but new thoughts?
No, I mean, this isn't a new subject for anybody. For anything, like if you are that good at something, if you make that much money, if you are that powerful, you get away with a lot of stuff. Look at the president. Okay,
Oh man,
like if you've got enough money, you've got enough power, you can get away with a whole lot. So
yeah.
I really yeah, I mean, maybe this is a lesson for the kids. Get rich, get powerful, do what you want, kids. I guess that's a lesson. Jones and McGregor can essentially do whatever they want. I think we've seen this already. Jones had an entire event moved for him.
Yep.
Like something like an action that could have undermined the sanctity of promoter and athletic commission relationships, something that alienated a lot of fans, something that pissed off the other 23 fighters on the card. Like they did this and didn't blink. McGregor committed a felony on UFC Embedded.
Yep, and they promoted it.
Yeah, and it became a commercial.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, these guys can do whatever they want, and that's something that we've seen with athletes of all different sports, man. Like how many DUIs and how many bar fights and how many drug scandals, how many hookers and all sorts of other stuff have we seen top level athletes get caught up with, and they still are there making millions of dollars doing the same damn thing. It's no different with MMA. The more money that gets involved in MMA, the more cases we're going to have like this. It's just facts, man.
And I agree with you on a lot of levels. I do feel like the big four sports, so to speak, here in the U.S., they have at least a limit, it seems more like, than fight sports, because in those sports, especially since they're singular brands, they've taken over the entire industry. They are the professional level of the industry. Their brand is important. Yeah, they have their stars, but they have the brand. So a guy like Donald Sterling can't throw around the N-word a bunch of times. He loses his team. An owner lost his team with the Clippers because he was, throwing around racial epithets and stuff like that. But fight sports, unfortunately, is kind of, because it's so money geared and so star geared and so short term, it's kind of like the more sleazy, less moral sport, in that it's about, you gotta sell the next fight. The brand has, and especially UFC at least was going that direction. They were talking about they wanted to be the biggest fight sport. They were building a brand. And then things started to change, and now it's more to fighters. So, and then now, because the sport is so strong, which I'm happy for, if those guys left, they'd go to another company and help the other company. If someone, that's what's the power of being the singular force in a particular sport. If you left the NFL, where are you going to go? Canadian football, arena football, you better be on your P's and Q's and not F around too much, or you can get blacklisted. Unfortunately, a guy like Greg Hardy only got knocked out of the sport just because he started to disappoint. But unfortunately, and fight sports, there really is there's no limit. The only way you'll get knocked out is if you start to not be worth the money. At least in other sports, sometimes too far is too far.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, if you're a star, you get away with stuff. It's just that simple. Like look at the fact that Sean O'Malley apparently having the same sort of pulsing issue as John Jones, and the card didn't move to LA for him. You know, so this is star treatment right here. So we actually have someone who, because we so poorly promoted that we were doing this show early, there's actually someone in the chat who knows.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait,
So
can you ask that person if they're regular or not? How did they find us? Because we didn't even promote that was going on. We was just a surprise. We just sprung it on people.
see, I recognize this name from my channel.
Ah.
Yeah, Mr. Starks right here. So he asks, why is everyone so obsessed with John moving up? It's perfectly fine to stay in his division and keep taking up wins.
It's the same thing that we see in everybody. We saw the same thing with George St. Pierre. We saw the same thing with the Demetrius Johnson. BJ Penn, after a certain point, that's why he went up before George St. Pierre. It's one thing to lap the division. It's another thing to start doing it a second time. And George St. Pierre, Demetrius, and John Jones. John Jones is in the middle of his second time you're lapping the division. So as a fan, you want to see a test. When these guys just start dominating and there's really no clear-cut threat whatsoever, and that's what's happening with John Jones right now, you want to see them tested. Either you like them or you're not. You want to see a tester, or if you like them, you want to see them do legendary things. And moving up and testing himself outside of his division to see if he can either finally lose and face be in a position that is more risk than reward, or maybe build his legendary stats and become a 2-division champion and stuff like that. It's just normal fan fair and fight promotion. You want to see the next challenge when someone seems to have tested and passed all the challenges already.
It's like a video game, and
Yes.
when you beat it at the normal setting, you got to play it at hard. Then you got to play it at expert. It's just to just keep your mind engaged, to just keep you in there and just seeing how great something can be.
Yep.
And John Jones has already done great things. John Jones has forever changed how we will think of mixed martial arts. So we just want to see it keep going up. We want to see it keep elevating and see those challenges keep going up. Remember, and we just talked about McGregor and as far as the star power thing, like there was a point in time where it was a strong possibility that Conor McGregor was supposed to beat Rafael dos Anjos and then challenge Robbie Lawler for the welterweight title.
Yeah.
We were really talking about this. And I've also heard that behind the scenes that Lawler may not even been the talk, that they were going to bring GSP back for a fight with McGregor. So do you realize like the level of greatness that people just want to see over and over and over again? And that's so Mr. Starks up here in the chat. He said, because this is my level of promoting that we were doing this. I tweeted out about 5 minutes before we went on, wake your punk ass up. It's going on early with the link, and he put in the chat, my punk ass was up. So
well, we thank your punk ass. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And he's got another good follow-up question here. He's asking, if he doesn't move up, do you think history will look down on his career, or will we just remember that he has a huge record of title defenses?
He'll get the Demetrius treatment. I mean, I think he's more well-liked to Demetrius, but he'll get Demetrius. Everybody, he's scared. He's the one to move. But in the end, as time goes by and we look back on things, I think we're fully aware he's either one of them are the greatest of all time. I don't think it'll affect too much long-term.
Yeah, I don't think that he'll get the Demetrius treatment at all.
Really?
I don't think he will at all. Like, well, okay, there will be some. There'll be like a vocal minority, but we look at Anderson Silva, and there were people that wanted to see him, stay at 205 and see if he could win the belt there, and that would have been cool. But do we even, when you think of Anderson Silva, does that enter your mind, or do you think like, man, this guy dominated middleweight?
I like that he tried though twice and went up once and fought a former champion. That still matters a little bit. I don't think John has to fight, but at least test the waters like Anderson did. Anderson gets points for that. Yeah,
I mean, and if GSP never came back to defeat Michael Bisping, I don't think we would look down on his welterweight legacy at all. If anything, a lot of times the moving up and down in weight is what damages the long-term legacy.
Yeah, because it's risk, but that also is what I think that's probably part of what made BJ great, because fans appreciate risk, even if it doesn't pay up. And the fact that he, went up to fight Matt Hughes, won, went up before other times, lost, fought Lyoto Machida, like that kind of, I don't give a damn, I'll fight anybody, does get you a lot of points, even if you lose.
Well, here's what John Jones has over Demetrius Johnson in that conversation if he never were to move up to heavyweight. He's fought these huge name guys.
Yeah,
He's fought the Machitas, the
yeah.
Rashad Evans, and
Rampage.
Rampage, and
Yeah,
Shogun, and all these huge legendary names. DJ doesn't have a wealth of notable names, at least in a sense of
mhm,
like a sense of like, oh my God, these guys were so great.
yeah.
DJ was the infancy of the flyweight division. So that while that division is being established, he's just murking everybody in front of him, which to us, or shouldn't say to us, me and you, but to a lot of people, doesn't look nearly as impressive as destroying guys who already had these championship legacies established.
Yeah, no, fair, excellent point. Tomas asks, should a guy like Luke Rockhold, who has lost 2 of his last 3 at a middleweight, get a title shot after only 1 win at light heavyweight, especially against a guy that was just KO'd by Thiago Santos and Jan Blachowicz?
I say why not? Because Rockhold is an established vet. He's a 2-time world champion in Strikeforce and the UFC. He's a star as well. There's the rivalry with AKA that you can dig into from a promotional standpoint. He's a personality that they can put butts in seats. And then also you look at who else is there at light heavyweight. Who else is there? Like do you think any of those guys at light heavyweight already? The only one that I'm and I should have mentioned him earlier. The only one that I'm thinking like this might be the guy is Johnny Walker, but we haven't seen a whole lot of him. We just haven't seen him in the cage long enough to really say that with any sense of certainty. So why not Luke Rockhold?
I'm going to disagree with you wholeheartedly on this. I say no, 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 no. In that, one, if he was coming to the division from a place of strength, sure, like Thiago Santos was doing very well in middleweight. He jumped in. What does Thiago Santos have? Like 2 fights at light heavyweight now, and he's getting a title shot.
Manawa,
And Usamir and Blachowicz. So that's 3. He fought 3 times. All right, so 3 times he jumped in. And at least he was coming in strong. Anthony Smith jumped up and earned it. Not the most impressive way, but he earned it. And Dominic Reyes has earned it. And I just don't like someone who, in the end, he still has lost recently a lot. Going into another division, only 1 win over a guy who is lower in the top 10, like I think 6 or 7. Granted, it's the top 10, but I think there's this. I'm kind of wish they would stop doing these fight promotions, especially if it was the type of thing where it was like, okay, John Jones. I don't feel like, I don't know. I'm not a believer in Luke Rockhold as a legit test for John Jones. I totally get all the angles you're saying about AKA, and that's great, but I don't think they should skip guys. And we shouldn't be afraid of a guy like Dominic Reyes going in there. And if he loses, who's to say he's broken for him? Maybe it's a fascinating learning lesson. George St. Pierre lost to Matt Hughes, and he rose back up. Henry Cejudo lost to Demetrius Johnson. He rose back up. That's a great story. You get your shot at the champ, you fall back, and then you come back up. There's been a lot of stories like that, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. And who's to say maybe Dominic Reyes beats him, or maybe he puts a new showing and he's a legit star. They're in a point where they really need to start bringing up those new names and developing new stars and stop relying on, stars from other divisions. I mean, shit, this is going to be our 2 in a row of a former middleweight. Now we're going to have, 3 in a row former middleweight? To me, that's almost like a terrible indictment of your division. You're like, this whole division isn't really ready, and we're not we're going for it, so we're going to go to middleweights for title shot. That just, show love to that division, especially if they've earned it, and there's guys that have earned it.
Well, here's a guy that has earned it. I think he should have gotten a title shot before. Chat brought him up. He says, any idea why Corey Anderson gets overlooked so much?
Well, I want to bring, because hasn't he had a couple of key losses when it mattered? Because I know you've talked about him a lot, and he is a very good fighter. But I feel like twice he's had that moment where he could have stepped up and he lost. Let's see.
He won his last
one
did. Against Alir Latifi at 232. And I think he was I guess you're looking up the stats now.
Yeah,
so let me not even say anything that's just wrong.
Yeah, no, you're making a good point, and he's earning his way. He's kind of once again on the cusp of it. But let's go back. And he won his first 2 fights in UFC, then not TKO'd by Jean Vellante. Then he won 3 in a row. Okay, he's in that contendership spot again. He's worked his way up 3 in a row. Lost to Shogun split decision. beat Sean O'Connell, lost 2 in a row to Jamie Manuel over in St. Preux. And those are good fighters, but those aren't the elites. He's not losing to guys that then went on to fight for the title. And then now currently he's on a 3-fight win streak. And I think the other thing that hurts Corey Anderson, and not to us because we know how legit he is, but he has 8 decision wins out of his 12. And I think all of his wins outside of Sean O'Connell is all decisions. So he's not the most exciting fighter. Every time it's time to maybe get that win that cements your place, he falls short. So he's gonna get another one soon. Let's see, is he set to fight again? Now he doesn't have a fight set up, at least from Sherdog. So whoever he gets next could be very pivotal, maybe finally getting him that title shot.
Well, here's something that I just looked up his record too. I'm just trying to get a sense of the timing. I do remember at a point thinking, okay, there's no one else, just give him the title shot. And that was before the Ilir Latifi fight. That took place 2 events after Daniel Cormier defended the heavyweight title against Derek Lewis. I was saying that after DC defeated Stipe and got the heavyweight belt, if he wanted to defend his title at light heavyweight, the best thing he could do was to go back down and fight Corey Anderson. It would be a winnable fight. It would also cement his light heavyweight legacy, this double champ thing, and he would actually defend the lower belt and then be able to move back up to defend the heavyweight title. I think Corey Anderson at that point, it would have just made sense to just give it to him. Because for all the reasons you pointed out, he's not the guy the UFC wants in there. I don't think he's the guy the fans want in there. But in a division so thin, so comically thin, especially at that time. I mean, that was before we really started paying attention to like Alexander Rakic or some of those guys coming up, or like Alonzo Minifield or whatever. I think you could have put him in that spot and just got it over with.
On a sporting level, I agree with you 1,000%. But in the end, it's fight promotion, and if you take it from the view of the UFC, they're not worrying about Daniel's legacy. They want to just make money off him, and he's one of their biggest stars. And Daniel Cormier versus Corey Anderson, boy, I tell you that's a tough sell, especially Corey Anderson coming off a 2 loss. If he had won like 3 in a row loss, then won another 2 in a row, I could see it. But he lost 2 in a row, and he got head kick knocked out, and he got knocked out on both of them impressively. And then I just don't feel like Patrick Cummins and Glover Teixeira at this point. Glover Teixeira, long in the tooth, it was enough, at least from a promotional standpoint, to say, yeah, Corey Anderson versus Dan Cormier, that's the fight you got to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the thing is, I know like Corey Anderson is not going to be a blockbuster draw.
Yeah,
and that's just the reality of it. But if you wanted to have a light heavyweight title fight, instead of having trying to move regulatory mountains to make sure John Jones can fight again right now, and if you just need that belt in play for the moment, just go ahead and let it happen. Let Corey just get the shot, and then you can go ahead and keep going with your regulatory mess behind the scenes. I just thought it would be just get it over with.
Well, I mean, 2019 will also be not only known as the trenches and another pivotal year, but it will also be known as the Anthony Walker Corey Anderson title shot campaign year. Hopefully, maybe around election season, maybe he'll get that shot. But the campaign continues in full force. Into our next question from Robbie: what are you expecting from the press conference on Friday that the UFC keeps hinting at? Anthony, you're there. What are your thoughts? I have nothing to say on this one.
So I haven't checked my email this morning. So perhaps the UFC has sent the docket for this press conference and who's going to be in attendance. I suspect, before I'm here, Daniel Cormier and Stipe will be there. So that would make a lot of sense. I will be at that fight too, so that's in Anaheim, California.
Nice.
What else? I would suspect Colby and Robbie Lawler would be there. I would guess that it'll be a seasonal press conference. Maybe Khabib and Dustin. I think we'll see. I think we'll see like the big main events coming up. But as far as what might actually transpire on the stage, I expect to see a MAGA head and an old belt.
Yeah, I mean, you said it all. I think based on what the UFC does because I was at the 230 press weigh-in where they promoted. I was at 232 at the time. They're going to showcase what's to come, the big fights to come. I think every person you named is a likely person there. It's International Fight Week, so this probably be the right time to promote it. So it's just going to be them promoting their slate of events. Hopefully, like we're going to see Marvel do at Comic-Con or a D23 at some point.
Ooh, baby.
Though that would be much, much better than this
much better. Oh God, I can't wait. I haven't even seen Spider-Man yet. I can't wait.
I got my tickets for Sunday. I can't wait.
Oh yeah, I gotta wait till I get back so I can see it with the wife, and otherwise I will be in lots of trouble. But just in case, I brought a Spider-Man shirt. Just in case I get a permission slip
for that date with Oscar Willis Spider-Man viewing. Huh?
We just might hold hands.
All right, let's jump into our UFC 239 Who You Got. First one is Jorge Masvidal versus Ben Askren. At this point, Jorge Masvidal is actually a plus 180 underdog to Ben Askren's minus 220 favorite. Askren is 19-0 with his 1-0 contest. Anthony, who do you got?
I'm gonna go Ben Askren in this one. I think I mean it could be a very dangerous fight for him. Oh, there's Oscar right there. It could be a dangerous fight. The thing is, though, Masvidal, while he has the ability to knock you out
behind you, holy shit!
While he has the ability to knock you out, he's more so the guy that can do that with accumulation. Darren Till being the exception. Askren has an ungodly chin. Obviously, Askren can take a massive amount of damage, yet still get that takedown and still grab you and start doing things to you. I think he might get banged up on the way in, but he's going to take Masvidal down and control this entire fight.
I agree with that on every level. And I know I'm taking the risk here and I'm going to pick Masvidal. And I talked about a little bit with James Lynch on the Score Made podcast. I just feel like his skill sets and attributes match up really well with the Ben Askren. That one, he's very difficult to take down and hold down. Two, very difficult to submit. So he's not going to make it easy for you. And also three, he has a very good gas tank. He has the gas tank of a man that was formerly at lightweight. So I think if this fight was at a 5-round main event, I think I really put it on Masvidal to win. But I still think at some point in the third round, I can see Ben Askren win the first 2 rounds, and then somehow that getting, working his little shots and getting him in those first 2 rounds, I can see him get to him in the third with this like a surprise. He finally rocks him, and then with Jorge Masvidal rocks you, he's going to finish here, especially he's showing that welterweight. So I'm taking a risk. I'm going Masvidal in that fight. Moving on to the co-main event, Amanda Nunes at minus 380 favorite against Holly Holm, who is a plus 315 underdog. Who do you got? Amanda Nunes, Holly Holm.
I'm going to lean toward Amanda Nunes in this one. But I think she can't just go in berserker rage. You just can't do that. Holly Holm is an expert counter striker, somebody who can handle pressure very well. So I think if she's able, if Nunes is able to initiate some sort of wrestling early on and then force Holly Holm to come to her a lot of times, I think she can win the fight. It may not be the most exciting fight, at least for the stretches of it. Maybe Nunes turns it up toward the end and gets a late finish, but Nunes by decision might be the right way to go.
I'm actually going the Nunes too, though. I'm gonna say Nunes by TK on the 4th round. I think at some point she will get to her. Holly Holm, man, this would have been a good fight, like around 2012, 2013. To me, it would have been an absolute pick 'em. I just don't like Holly Holmes at this fight. Going back down to cutting for bantamweight, 37 years old, and Nunes is in the prime of her career. She's on fire. The only question I would just have is what's Nunes' motivations? I doubt there's going to be a question of it, but she has thrown around possibly retiring. She has thrown around wanting to go fight Valentina Shevchenko, 3rd-time flyweight. So it's like, is she as motivated as she can be? Is it going to affect her? Outside of that, this is all Nunes for me. Going on from that, moving on to the main event, or as some might call it, how does John Jones win this fight? John Jones at 24-1 with 1-0 contest for now. He's a minus 650 favorite in this fight. Thiago Santos at 21-6 is a plus 475 underdog. John Jones versus Thiago Santos. Anthony, how does John Jones win?
Murder, death, kill. John Jones by murder, death, kill. I think one thing about this too, even if Santos comes out there, he comes out there swinging and kind of doing what we wanted to see Anthony Smith do,
Yes,
and just
yes,
charging in and just being
yes.
aggressive. Jones just say, the hell with this, and just throw him down and just elbow his head off.
Yep.
So that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
don't really know what else.
I
I
agree
can't
with
add
you.
on.
That's the thing. Like people will look at John Jones and understand his striking and that the elliptical kicks and his ability to close range, his elbows. His striking is what people always think of, but his wrestling and his ground and pound is ferocious. Like we don't see it, but I'll never forget his ground and pound. Lyoto Machida just cutting him open and just bludgeoning him, and his ground pound is nasty. And I think you hit it. I think that's the same thing's gonna happen. This guy, and I saw DC mention he needs to fight his fight. He really does. Don't fight a tactical fight. Fight the way you got you there. And the way that got you there is going to run him right into a John Jones takedown and just trouble galore on the floor. I'm going to go with, I'll say second round TKO for John Jones in this one. I just don't like the matchup at all. Do we want to jump into UFC Sacramento question? Do we want to do that, or do we want to?
You want to do it later, or?
No, well, not later. If you want to do it now, we'll just record it and end the show on that. We can do that.
Okay.
All right, so we'll do some advanced UFC Sacramento questions here to end the show. We got 4 questions for you. First, despite both fighters having 8 professional wins, is it too much too soon for Aspinall against former UFC champion Germaine de Randamie?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is an appropriate step up. Aspinall has handled some pretty stiff challenges. I don't see why they would hold her back any further. Just go ahead, let her fly, let her do her thing. She's shown herself capable of handling everything else that they put in front of her. If I'm remembering this correctly, didn't she just smash Tanya Evinger?
Yeah, 2 fights ago.
Yeah, so yeah, at 229, she like destroyed Tanya Evinger, and who, while we aren't really thinking about Tanya Evinger as a great fighter now, she had a very dominant run in Invicta and probably shouldn't have been in the UFC long before she did. If you can handle a veteran like that, yeah, put her up against GDR. Why not?
Yeah, I agree totally. I mean, at first glance, you go, Aspinall, damn, didn't she just get here? She's already in the main event, but that's kind of how things go. And there was a lot of hype behind her anyway. Coming into it, she's delivered. And, since she's been in the UFC, she's been Lena Landsberg, Tanya Evinger, and first round TKO. Very impressive because she's durable as all hell, like you just mentioned. And Sijara Eubanks, she's got to win, which is her second career win against Sijara Eubanks because that's how she ended her Invicta run. So 2 wins over her. And de Randamie, while a legitimate star in the women's end of things, she's kind of been this weird name that has had odd activity. Like going back to her schedule, she lost to Amanda Nunes in 2013, out for 2 years almost, comes back and fights Larissa Pacheco, doesn't fight a year later, got to win, then fights another year later, Holly Holm in 2017, gets to win in that infamous fight, which we all kind of wonder about, and then again out for a year again, fights Raquel Pennington. Usual real good wins, but her like age and inactivity doesn't make her seem like too much of a jump forward. And I don't mind the fight at all. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's an interesting test for her, and it's a main event I'm looking forward to myself. So no, moving on from that, another question about Sacramento. Does Ryan Hall have the slickest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu finishing game in the UFC?
I don't know. I guess so. So I think about Do Bronx.
Yes, that's my guy.
I think about Damian Maya. There are some guys out there that will do some very incredible things. Ryan Hall, I don't think we've seen enough of him to say that. He's definitely with more activity, he could be on that list for sure. But we've only seen it a couple times. We've seen Do Bronx do it over and over again. We've got years of Damian Maya twisting people up into knots. So while he has the potential to be there, I got to see more frequency in order to put a stamp on it. What about you, man?
I agree 1,000%. Ryan Hall, very good submission guy, but yeah, he's got to prove he only has 1 submission in the UFC anyway. That's the BJ Penn, and then we're all looking at BJ Penn at this point. Like, I think I could submit him. Okay, I couldn't submit him, but BJ Penn, the submission over him
Don't you say that outside of a strip club.
I know, I know. I wouldn't jump to my guy. You nailed it. Dubronx is the guy, Damian Maya. If he gets a submission on Darren Elkins on the Sacramento card, that's something because Darren Elkins is a very good ground grappler, really tough, very durable, hard guy to handle, active. So if he can get a submission on him, something impressive, maybe we can have that conversation. But Damian Maya and Dubronx are at the top of that list by far, and Ryan Hall has to make a lot of room. I mean, make up a lot of ground to do that, especially for a guy who only has one submission so far in his 3 fights in the UFC
Against the corpse of BJ Penn.
Exactly, against the zombie BJ Penn. I mean, that's almost easy work at this point. Unfortunately, sad. It's just disappointing.
Oh man, isn't that terrible?
It's depressing, and just seeing what else is going on BJ Penn. But we talked about that last week. Go watch last week's episode. You can see all our ranting on BJ Penn. Next question: is Beneil Dariush unfairly labeled as a fighter with a suspect chin, or does the glove fit? Because if the glove fit, you must have quit.
Yes. I don't know how I can make a Johnny Cochran reference and stay on theme. So I'm just going to say there is some legitimacy to that. I don't think his chin is just the worst thing ever, but it's obviously a problem. It's obviously caused him some issues. I don't even know, man. I don't know. The Alex Hernandez fight is one that troubles me, but at the same time, I think he went in there taking that extremely lightly. And then also think like the Drew Dober fight, he did take a lot of punishment in that first round and came back to get the finish. So maybe I'm just ranting on about nothing. Maybe there's nothing to worry about. Maybe Dariush is okay. He just has to mentally be there. He just has to get up for the fight. That possibly could be it. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I think it's unfair. I mean, it's just the nature of matchmaking and how things have just worked out for him because he's only been knocked out 3 times out of his 4 losses. Here, he got knocked out by Alexander Hernandez and Edson Barboza. I mean, getting finished by a knee from Edson Barboza, there's no shame in that. I think it's probably, if that's what the label on him is, I think it's unfair. He's a tough fighter, and it seems like his style is you're not going to beat him by decision. He's going to beat you by decision. So if you're going to beat him, you're going to have to knock him out. And probably people know that at this point. So maybe they're extra aggressive, try some stuff. But I'm not. The glove in this case does not fit.
So we're actually acquitting.
Yes.
Okay. See, I worked it out. There's a Cochran reference.
All right. Final question on UFC Sacramento to wrap up the show this week. Marvin Vettori took Israel Adesanya to a split decision. Are his abilities being slept on against Cesar Ferreira?
Maybe, but I mean that was an older version of Adesanya, and I know that sounds ridiculous because that was only like a year ago. But Adesanya has improved leaps and bounds in that year, and he's done a whole lot in that year. So I don't think the fact that you lost to Israel Adesanya, but you didn't die in there, gives you any sort of street cred in this fight. So yeah, man, Cesar Ferreira, of course, is going to prepare for this guy appropriately and treat him as such. But the fact that he survived Israel Adesanya, an older version of Israel Adesanya, a version of Israel Adesanya that wasn't quite as polished, and especially if I'm remembering this correctly, he had a lot of success against Adesanya in the clinches, against the fence, and that's an area where you're not gonna have as much success against Adesanya anymore. He can get credit for being a guy who forced Adesanya to step his game up. Give him that, but I'm not buying that, man. That doesn't earn you any extra points, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and when you look at a lot of great fighters' resume, you always see those one kind of fights where it was just a weird matchup. They had a weird night, or they couldn't get a read quite on the person. Maybe they couldn't get a finish, and it just happened to play out weird. And that's nothing to take away from Martin Vettori. He's a very good, up and coming fighter, talented. But him taking Israel Adesanya to a split decision doesn't make me. He's on the level, and he's a future contender, and he's very good. And just fights somehow go like that. I mean, Anderson Silva, I think, went to a decision against Damian Maia, and it wasn't because he was taken down a lot and it was a lot of grappling. It was just a weird fight, and no one's looking at Damian Maia. Man, that guy was a full, a decision with Anderson Silva. Man, he's a striking genius if he can hang with him that long. No, nobody's looking at it like that. And likewise, when who was it? Patrick Cote went a long time with Anderson Silva. I think it went to decision. Some fights play out weird, and the superstars can't always put on a show like they expect to.
Yeah, not everything's going to be a highlight reel.
Exactly.
So when it isn't a highlight reel, that doesn't necessarily mean that the guy who didn't get murked in there is the next coming of the Messiah. It's just he just had some success that he would not be able to replicate if you were to redo that fight.
That's all our questions. Anthony, you can take it away. You are the expert and fantastic at finishing these things off. Please take it away.
All right. Well, first, Jason, we got to ask you where the people can find you on social media, and what do you have coming up on the fine website known as Sherdog.com?
As always, on Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at Cheap Seats Chat. There's a few stories up right now. The Morgan Fryer interview I had for PFL next week is up there. The Sarah Kaufman one is still up there. I think there's might be another one. Oh man, I'm forgetting right now. But a lot of my stuff, there'll be more stuff coming up in the next few days. But I interviewed Kevin Sierler, who's fighting on Contender Series in a few weeks. Interviewed Ricky Simon, who's fighting on Sacramento. So that'll come out that week. Hopefully we'll have Walt Harris in a little while. Who did I talk to? Bellator. Oh yeah, Jordan Young from Bellator, who also is fighting. That fight's on the next Friday. So I think there's some more. I have more stuff for you guys next week. But always just find me on there or look me up on YouTube. Search my name there. And as always, Cheap Seats Chat, Instagram and Twitter.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty impressive. You've got so much work and so many interviews lined up. You don't even remember who you talked to.
No, yeah, it really has been a blur the last week or so.
You know what? I actually feel comfortable calling you Captain Credential this week. You are not getting a blanket demotion because I'm temperamental. I'm very proud of you, sir.
That's how you know you're really sleepy. You're not all the way there.
Yeah, I'm when I'm sleepy, I'm too honest. Yeah, that's all it is. All right, so I can be found on Twitter at Ant Walker MMA. So I've been very, very busy just in the last couple of days, and I'll be very, very busy for the next several days because I'm here for UFC 239. So yesterday I got the guest on MMA Fighting's A-Side live chat with Jose Youngs. So go ahead, check that out. I had a one-on-one interview with Martin Lewandowski, the co-founder of KSW. He's supposed to be, I know he's planning on doing some more interviews while he's in town. He came in town for the Fighter Awards. And before all those other outlets talk to him, because all of them scheduled to talk to him later, check out Sherdog.com first, because your boy got that first. What else we got coming up? Media Day for UFC 239. I will be on the ground with Mike Sloan, one of our writers and photographers here. So check out the YouTube channel, check out the main page. You'll see some more interviews from all of your favorites for UFC 239. There'll be preview shows coming up, probably with myself and the homie Pat Aj. If I'm OJ, I'm always going to mispronounce his name. Sorry, Pat. It's got a lot of good stuff coming up, good, bad, and the ugly as well after 239. So you know what you must do. You got to stay beautiful. You got to stay positive. You got to wake up.
Into the Mac Life.
You got to get better friends. And through it all, you got to stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.